I am knitting my custom blanket. I am finishing out row 10. So this is day 2 of working on the custom blanket. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue knitting out row 10, garter knit stitch, and then we will move on to our stockinette stitch with a garter border. So let's get started on knitting. So yesterday I knit it for 2 hours. I casted on 230 stitches. I'm doing a garter border edge for the blanket. I'm finishing this out and then I will start the stockinette for the blanket. So right now we're just knitting up length before we knit up the logo. The logo needs to be centered, so we need to give ourselves enough room and then center it because we need those rows. He is tall. Poison John is tall, so we got to factor in the length in this blanket as we go. All right. I'm finishing up row 10, and then I'm going to move on to row 11. Let's continue knitting row 10 all the way to the end. Okay. I'm just knitting to the end of row 10. And now I'm going to start row 11, and I'm going to knit all the way across to the end. Garter knit stitch. This is the border of the blanket. Knitting all the way across. I'm knitting to the end of row 11. Garter knit stitch. This is the border for the blanket. Just knitting all the way to the end. And now I'm going to start row 12. So for row 12, I'm going to knit 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the garter border. I'm going to put my stitch marker there. And now I'm going to purl all the way across. Let's purl all the way across. So I'm going to purl 210 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until I get to 210. 205, 206, 207, 208, 209, and 210. I'm going to add a stitch marker. I just purled 210 stitches, and now I'm going to knit 10 for the garter ridge border. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And now I'm going to knit row 13 all the way across. So I'm working on the stockinette stitch for the blanket. I'm going to go ahead and knit all the way across for 230 stitches. So just knit all the way across for row 13. (22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Okay, I just finished row 13. Now I'm going to start row 14. I'm going to knit 10 stitches for the garter border ridge. Up to my stitch marker, it's 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Move my stitch marker over. I'm going to purl across 210 stitches. 1, 2. I'm just purling 210 stitches on row 14. 1, 202, 203, 204, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I have my stitch marker, so I'm going to put it to the other side, and I'm going to knit the last 10 stitches for the garter border. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now I'm going to knit all the way across for row 15. I'm working the stockinette for the blanket. So I'm going to knit all the way across for my stockinette stitches. Row 15, I knit it all the way across. This is my stockinette stitch for the blanket. I'm already on row 15, finishing up row 15. Now I am going to start row 16. So this is the purl side. So the garter border, knit 10 stitches, and then I'm going to purl for 210 stitches and then knit for the garter. And that'll be row 16. All right, so I'm just knitting 10 stitches. Row 16, I knitted 10 stitches for the garter border. Now I'm purling 210 stitches all the way across, just purling. Row 16, 210 stitches. I purled all the way across, moving my stitch marker over, and now I'm knitting 10 stitches for the border. Now I'm on row 17, and as you can see, we're getting there. 230 stitches. So now I'm just going to knit all the way across. We're doing our stockinette stitch. Just knit all the way across. Row 17. Move the stitch marker and continue knitting all the way across. Garter Ridge Stockinette blanket. The garter helps keep the stockinette flat. I am just knitting to the end of row 17. It was the knit side of the stockinette. Knitting to the end. Now I am on row 18. I'm going to knit my 10 stitches, and then I'm going to purl 210 stitches, row 18. I'm going to move the stitch marker over and purl 210 stitches. All right, now I'm purling 210 stitches. row 18, I'm just purling to the end of 210 stitches. And then I'm going to move my stitch marker over, which means I'm going to knit 10 stitches for the border. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I am on row 19 and I'm just going to knit all the way across. Just knit all the way across. This is your stockinette stitch. And what I am doing here is I'm creating the length of the blanket in order to make the logo to center it. So I'm probably going to work on, as of right now, I'm going to work on 4 skeins of yarn, and then I will go from there. So it's going to be consistent for the rest of the rows. Knit, purl, knit, purl. But the garter edges are going to be 10, 210 of the purl, and then 10 where the stitch markers are. So that's how I'm creating this blanket so far. I'm knitting all the way across. I'm finishing up row 19, knitting to the end. And this is going to be very repetitive for 4 skeins of yarn until I decide whether or not I want to continue with the 5th, just knit and purl with the 5th, or if I want to see if it's going to be the right length to start the logo. So now I am on row 20 and I'm going to knit 10, purl 210 and knit 10. So the rows are just now very repetitive until I get the desired length in order to start knitting up the logo. All right, row 20, I'm going to knit 10 for the garter border, move my stitch marker over, and then I'm going to purl 210 stitches and then knit the last 10 for row 20. As you can see, it's becoming very repetitive, and the rows are going to be the same all the way throughout the skeins of yarn that I use to get my length. Okay, now I'm going to purl. Row 20. Finish my 210 for the purling, and then I'm going to knit 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Row 21, I'm just going to knit all the way across. 1, 2. Haven't dropped the stitch yet. All right, I am just finishing up row 21 and I knit it all the way across. And now I'm ready to start row 22. So as the blanket becomes longer, it's going to be just a repetitive stage of the same color in black to do your knit and purl rows. So you're creating your garter ridge with your stockinette, and it's a little hard to see because of how dark the yarn is. But as you can see, there's your garter edge, there's the garter bottom, there's your stockinette right there. So as you can see, it's flat because stockinette curls, so the garter stitch helps to create the flatness within the stockinette instead of rolling. And that way you don't have to worry about all the blocking and then making like an I-cord or something. This way it helps you to be a little more efficient in knitting and gives you that flatness to your knitting without having to pin it all and block it all. I mean, in the end, with a logo, it may need some blocking still, But this makes it a little more efficient for your knitting because it is a lengthy project. And so I'll be on row 22, and then I'll be doing the 10 for the border, and then I'll do the purl. So I worked on this for a few hours, and this is the length of the blanket, and yesterday I did 2 hours. All right, everyone, happy knitting, and I'll continue knitting another day.